Hi everyone, how you going? Happy Mother's Day on this, in Australia. Anyway, I know it's not Mother's Day for everyone, but welcome to Mother's Day in Australia. I'm not going to keep you for too long today. Thank you for, if you're jumping on live, thank you for sharing your Mother's Day morning with me. Hi Jodie, how you going? Happy Mother's Day, beautiful. Hope you're having a lovely morning and being spoiled. I have been totally spoiled and I'm loving it. I had coffee and fruit chocks left on the front doorstep with some flowers from my beautiful stepdaughter. How lucky am I? And hubby spoilt me last night, and one of my boys has given me a beautiful big gift. Thank you, Jodie. And we're getting ready to just have a very casual lunch because we can't really do very much, can we? So I'm not going to keep you too long today. It is a lovely morning. Yeah, the sun's shining. It's great after all the rain we've had for the last couple of days. So welcome, and thank you for sharing a bit of time with me this morning. If you are watching the replay and you have any questions, just comment. Oh, thanks, Marie. Oh, aunties are special. Aunties are really special. Hi, Sharon. Happy Mother's Day, gorgeous. Hi. I've lost my train of thought now already. Never mind. Anyway, we'll just get on with it. Oh, that's right. Yes, if you're watching the replay, just comment replay. And if you have any questions, I'll make sure, I might not get to them straight away, but I'll get to them a little bit later on today when everyone's relaxed a little bit. And I've had lunch with my family. Hi, Rianda. How you going? Happy Mother's Day. So this morning it's a bit of a Q&A session, so I'd really love you to be interactive and, send me through some questions if you have them while we're on. I'm going to talk about being love. I am love. You are love. We are all love. So how do we get there? And how did I get there? So I'm gonna get really vulnerable today, and I'm gonna get really raw, and I'm going to share my story with you. And hi Priya, beautiful girl, lovely to see you here. Not all of my story is happy. There was a long period of you are love, absolutely, we are all love. There's a lot of my story that isn't light and fluffy and unicorns and rainbows. There was a long time where it was anything but that. So how did I get to be love? And first of all, what does it mean to say I am love? I am love is a state of being, and it's living and breathing and feeling and giving and receiving love. To be able to give love, we have to be able to receive it. We have to be open to it, and we have to love ourselves to be able to give love to others who need us to give them love. And that includes our family and our children and our colleagues and our clients and our friends, everyone. If we live a life through love, it has that ripple effect. We've seen it mentioned a few times with the different presenters that have come on during their lives. There is that huge ripple effect of being love, and where that takes people and the opportunities that it opens up for them in their lives. So how do we get to be love? Well, it starts with you. And you've heard me, those of you who have watched my two previous presentations, you've heard me talk about giving yourself permission. It all starts with you. Everything starts with you and making a decision around your own happiness. And you may remember that question is, are you a victim or do you choose to empower yourself? And even when you get to that point where you need to make that decision, you might not even feel like being up to making that decision. You might not even, that's right, Jodie, it all starts with us. You might not even be feeling that. You might not even really be ready. But when are you ever really ready for anything? It's just you make a decision and you follow the path and you do the work. So how do we become love? It starts with you and your self-love. How do we learn to love ourselves? And this is a very big topic, by the way, and I could talk for hours about this stuff. And I do client sessions for 2 hours at a time around this stuff, but I'm just breaking it down to try and keep it simple for you today. and so that you can get back to having cold toast in bed or tea or whatever it is that you're doing to be spoiled this morning. So thank you, Jody. Thank you for your encouragement. I really appreciate it. Grateful for your support. So you start with self-love. And how do we learn to love ourselves? We take one step at a time and we look after ourselves. It's self-care, it's self-acceptance, it's, ranging from the bubble bath to setting boundaries. There is a huge scale of what self-love means here. But we're just starting with the very basics. And it's being aware of your own reactions. Learning to love yourself involves all of the things that I talked about in my first presentation, which is around giving yourself permission, setting boundaries, coming first, giving yourself permission to thrive, and giving yourself permission to heal. And it all starts with you. How you treat others is a direct reflection of how you are feeling about yourself. And if you're not feeling that you love yourself, that is going to play out in your behavior towards others and your reactions in situations. And how do you react to your children? What are you teaching your children? Do you criticize yourself? Are they seeing you criticize yourself, or are they seeing you love yourself, and then you can then teach them to love themselves? Really important for our future generations that our children are learning to love themselves first and to put themselves first. And thanks for all the hearts, guys. I know that resonates with all of you on here today who are mums. We teach them to love themselves first. Let's create the change now. I would never, ever want my daughter to grow up thinking and feeling the way that I did right up until probably mid-30s. And it was so destructive. And I'll get to all of that in a minute. And same still on your children. Do you enter into their drama? Or are you able to just step back through love and be the observer and support them, but without getting dragged into their drama and entering into the battle, choosing what you're entering into. So self-love is all of those things. Self-care, self-awareness, self-acceptance, how you treat others, and being aware of your children's behavior. Setting boundaries through love. Sometimes it's really hard to say no to people, isn't it? Really hard. Especially when and we all have had, in my case, some people still have those people in your lives that just, they want everything from you and they don't ever give anything back. It might be conversations with people and they just talk about themselves the whole time and they never ask you how you are, or they never ask you how you're going or what you're up to. So the next time you're going to have a conversation with that person, that's what it's going to be like. So maybe you do the conversation differently the next time, or maybe you put off having that conversation for another time. Set boundaries through love. Classic example, I work with a beautiful lady. She's very dear to me. We've worked together for a long time. She has an elderly mother-in-law who she loves dearly, but is quite demanding of her time, and especially since she lost her husband. And my colleague was becoming resentful, and we were having a conversation about it one day because she expects her to visit, do things for her, expects phone calls at certain times and things like that. And my friend was getting quite resentful and feeling the obligation around all of that. So we talked it through, and I just said, maybe just rearrange things. Maybe you can tell her when you're going to contact her, or maybe you can tell her when you're going to pick her up and take her out for her day out. Make it work around you, and you can do that through love. Again, being love, acting through love, feeling love, seeing beyond the resentment in that situation meant that she was able to see that situation with compassion, but also act for her own boundaries for the benefit of both of them, which has enriched their relationship since changing those things around. And we can do that. How do you know what you need, and how do you communicate what you need to go through your journey to happiness? And it's not this big difficult thing. You know, so many people overcomplicate everything and they think they've got to go off and do all of these things to try and figure everything out. It's quite simple. Just stop. You just stop and find your stillness. And in stillness, it can be sometimes a scary thing to be alone with your thoughts at times, but through meditation and relaxation and doing happy little habits, you will come to the realization and awareness of where you are at and what you are going to need. And then the next step is to ask for what you need. And it's loving yourself enough, being love enough that you know what you need and you do something about it. And you can communicate that to loved ones, professionals, coaches, whoever you have in your life or whoever you are going to bring into your life to help you move through to happiness. Stop pushing so much. One of the biggest things I learned through my life, is that I've been in survival mode, or I was in survival mode from the age of 12 years old. And everything was push, push, push. And I had to make everything happen. And I couldn't rely on anyone else. And I couldn't ask anyone else for help. And I couldn't trust anyone else. And that's all due to the trauma I've been through. And I'll get through all of that. But stop pushing. Allow. When you allow, you find your way. If you keep pushing and keep forcing, you end up exhausted and spent and running around in circles and doing a whole heap of things that don't serve you. Whereas if you stop and allow, you find your way. So learn to allow. Stop pushing so hard all the time. Stop trying to strive for something that you don't even know what you're striving for. Just allow. Take a step back. Be quiet and be still and listen. You will, yes, Robin, allow. When you are still and when you are quiet, you will get what you need. You will get the people that you need in your life will just flow into your life and help you. That's the way this works. If you stop pushing and you allow, it will all just happen for you as long as you surrender and allow. Stop and allow. Exactly, Jody. And you can then, when you know what you need, you can ask through love. And that's, self-respect, self-acceptance. Again, same things, same themes as well. Can you listen to others without judgment? And that is what love is as well. Is even in confronting or confrontational situations, you can still be an active listener, which means actively listening, paying attention to what they're saying, listening to what they're saying and allowing them to be heard, and then you can respond through love. Doesn't need to be aggressive, doesn't need to be nasty, doesn't need to be putting people down. You can work through conflict from a place of love. And again, these are really big concepts and I'm just trying to break them down to be really simple. So it may, Jody, really important. So it may seem, I'm kind of glossing over all of this stuff a little bit, but I don't want to keep you here for 2 hours. It's Mother's Day. It's my Mother's Day too. Emotions to empower yourself. You can empower yourself through your vulnerability. Allow yourself to be vulnerable. That is the most powerful thing that you can do to help yourself move towards your happiness, is allow yourself to be vulnerable. Hi Tracy, how you going? Excellent, Marie, that's great. Being vulnerable is actually your strength. It's really hard to just sit in everything that might be making us feel really uncomfortable and not know which direction we're going in, and that is vulnerability. What do I do next? I don't know. How do I tackle this? I don't know. How do I get to feeling like that? I don't always know what I need to do next, but if I just allow myself to be vulnerable, open up, get in touch with finding out what you need, knowing how to ask for what you need and who to ask for what you need, you will get there. You will absolutely get there. Give yourself a break. There's a lot of people in this community alone, without, let alone everyone else that you know and I know and people around the world. Many of us have been through huge, huge things in our lives, massive stuff, and people break when they've been through some of these things. I did for a while. Give yourself a break. You are finding your way like the rest of us. It's not always going to be easy, and you are not always going to be able to come up with the answers just like that. You have to allow yourself the time and the vulnerability and the stillness to work through it and figure it out and to know what to do next. So give yourself a break. Make that decision. Are you a victim, or do you choose to empower yourself? Empower yourself by taking control. You might not right now be in control of what you're thinking and how you're feeling, but you can be. And that starts from making that decision. Are you a victim, or do you choose to empower yourself and be still, find your allowing, if that's the right English, allow and be vulnerable and take one step at a time. So, how did I find my happiness? I am in a state of the truest happiness in my life that I have ever been through, but it hasn't always been like that. When I was, hey Curtis, how you going? When I was 12 years old, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. That's exactly right, Tracy. Sometimes you just have to sit with it for a while. That's exactly right, and it feels yuck, but you can do many things to get you through that yuck state, to get to the other side. And allow your vulnerability, because that's your strength. So when I was 12, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was away at boarding school, and it was really tough to be away from my family and not know what was going on. And back in those days, the hard stuff wasn't discussed with kids, and I'm not blaming my parents at all. They were doing their best at the time. So I went through a couple of years of not really knowing what was going on, and sometime during those following couple of years, my grandmother, my mum's mum, was also diagnosed with breast cancer. And their circumstances were quite different. Their journeys were quite different. Mum ended up in remission and was well at some point, and I went away to New Zealand as an exchange student. And I was away for 3 months. When I came back, I went into year 12. I was quite apart from what was going on with my grandmother. I didn't really understand everything that was going on with her. But when I came back from that exchange and I went back into year 12, I came back and school had started late, so I was already, behind anyway. The first day that my dad drove me to my best friend's house, my beautiful bestie, Lou, he was driving me to her house, and he told me that Mum had a month to live. And I was just, I'd just come back home. I was just going through, trying to get my head around being back at school. And 5 weeks after I got back from New Zealand, she passed away. And it was horrible to watch that. She was in hospital for a long time. And then my dad, after all of that, my dad was working 7 days a week, really struggling. I was just trying to deal with being at school and whatever. And 9 months after my mum passed away, which was in March, it's just gone 33 years, in the following January, my grandmother then passed away. And I couldn't even bring myself to go to her funeral because I was already so sad and broken, really. My mum hadn't been able to be there for me from the age of 12, so I'd been doing it on my own for a long time. So I finished year 12 and try not to drag this out too much, but I ran off the rails. Drugs, alcohol, you name it. I moved away, came back home, moved away. I trashed myself. I had many years of just trying to figure out who I was. I was looking to relationships and other people to trying to validate myself and my life and help me find some kind of direction. And a few years down the track, I realised that I wanted to be back home and be with my family. My dad had remarried by that stage, and I had a loving stepmom. Went into my early 20s. This was all happening. Wrote myself off with alcohol so much that I ended up waking up with meningitis one day, and I was in hospital for a considerable amount of time. And really lost my way for a long time trying to figure out what to do. And then got married the first time around, and it was a very destructive relationship. It was probably the worst decision that I could have made. But I had 3 beautiful children with that man, and as awful as it was, and the horrible things that were said to me, and the belief that I ended up allowing myself to believe, got me to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore. And I was on medication, and you get to the point where your thoughts are so foggy and you're so clouded that you can't even think about the trauma that you would put others through. I had a bit of an insight into that, obviously, because of what I'd been through. So I spent many years just trying to battle my own mental health, and was in a destructive relationship, and it took a long time to find the strength to leave that marriage. And I learned a lot when I did, and it still wasn't very nice. Anyway, a little bit down the track, I entered another relationship that I was in for a couple of years, and then that man just disappeared one day. And it was also a very dysfunctional relationship, and I'd allowed my children to be part of this person's life, and I thought that was who I wanted to be with. I thought that was the life that I wanted to have, and then one day he disappeared, and it took me 10 years to find out anything about him. I didn't ever hear what happened. So by this stage now, I'd already been doing some work on myself for a long time, but after all of this, I was at the stage of having pretty low self-worth. Didn't think that I deserved to be in a relationship, because I just kept believing that this is all I was entitled to, or this was all I was worth. And then just set about working on me and doing what I wanted to do, and looking after my children, and being a mum, and working, and not really having any idea what I wanted to do with my life, but just knowing that I needed to make it about me. And I had a year of saying yes. I seem to do these theme years with myself. So this one particular year, I had a year of saying yes, and it was saying yes to opportunities. Some of you may remember on one of my other lives that my mum said to me once before she died, take every opportunity you get. I didn't always at the time understand what that meant, but I have tried to live my life like that. And so for these next 2 years, I was fiercely determined to be on my own, and I just went within. It was about what I needed, what I wanted. I learned to set boundaries around friends. I learned to set boundaries around my kids, and I just started to feel a bit better. And then all of a sudden, well, it wasn't all of a sudden, it was gradual. I just started to feel something was about to happen. I was learning to trust, and I was learning to allow. Still wasn't perfect at it, but I was learning to allow whatever opportunity was coming into my life. And then I met my husband, Phil, now. And when we met, it was bells and whistles and chemistry and amazing things. And I knew that he was coming, and I knew that all I needed to do was just take care of myself, and that it was all going to be okay. So we met, and then, on the first conversation, we figured out we had 3 kids each, and we were like, oh, okay, this will be interesting. amazing. We've got, 6 amazing kids. We got married, and then 6 months after we were married, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that sent us into a bit of a spin. And it really forced me to take a good, long, hard look at myself. And I made that decision. Was I a victim of these circumstances, or was I going to empower myself? I chose to be a survivor, and I chose to empower myself. And I chose to take a deep, long, hard look at myself and figure out how had I got here and what was I going to do about it. And it was the most enlightening, life-changing, light bulb moment, I guess, in my life. And as part of healing from the journey through breast cancer, which was pretty brutal, one of the things that I learned to do was allow. And I realized that I had been living a life of stress and constantly in the survival mode. So I was push the whole time, never stopped, never relaxed, was annoyed about everything all the time that was just pointless. So I learnt to change my decisions. I learnt to look at things differently, and I learnt that when that brutal inner critic was trying to throw things at me, I learnt to deal with it and turn it around and not accept everything that I was saying to myself. I allowed myself to be vulnerable. I allowed myself to be still and figure out what I needed, and then know how to ask for help and know who to ask for help. And then these people just began appearing in my life who have helped me figure all of this stuff out and get me to where I am now. Now, every day is an absolute joy for me. Every day is just the deepest sense of happiness. And I have crap days too. I have crap things that happen, but it's very rare now. My life has really turned around, and I'm finding my way still. We don't ever stop working on ourselves, and we don't ever stop figuring out the next way forward. We keep going. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Even I'm incredibly strong and incredibly resilient, but I still allow myself to be vulnerable as well. And I learned all about that last year when I went through something really epic. And but you know what, Jody, the magic happens in the darkness. You need to embrace the darkness as well. There's a lot of talk about dark and light, and it's wonderful to be living in the light and sharing light with others, but the dark is a truly powerful place of transformation, and we need to not be afraid of it, but we need to embrace it, and we need to go into it to be able to come out of it. There's so much power in that, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and making the decision to empower yourself. So, I did the work. I learnt these things along the way, and I had still have some incredible people who are still helping me find the way through. And that's right, Jody, the dark is where we learn the lessons. Absolutely. The dark is the magic. The dark is absolutely the magic if you allow it. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? We can sit back and we can look at things that have happened in the past with fresh eyes, and we can see the lesson in it. We might not always get it at the time, but if we allow ourselves to really think about it further down the track, you can see the lesson in it, and you can change things. Now, I can be in the situation, and be the observer, and not go right into being reactive to the moment. I'm the observer of the situation. I think, well, what is in this for me? If someone difficult comes into your life and you have difficulty communicating, might be a work colleague, and there seems to be a bit of that going on at the moment. Look at the situation and think, what am I here to learn out of this? Because every difficult situation you go into, there is something for you to learn out of it. If you allow yourself to be vulnerable and be still, you will find out where that is. Exactly, Jody. Is that where you stop? Yes, that is where you stop. Stop. Don't go into the drama of it. Stop. Every situation that you are in that is difficult, there is some learning there for you. And if you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you will see what it is and it will make sense. And you'll go, oh, I get it now. Allow yourself to do that. So I don't want to keep you any longer because it is Mother's Day. If anyone has any questions and haven't asked any while we're here, please send me a message. I am more than happy to answer anyone's questions around any of this, and or post underneath the live if you want to. If you're watching the replay, comment that you are watching the replay, because I know a lot of you will end up watching it later. It's a special morning. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope you are finding your joy today and tomorrow and every day after that. So your being love starts with you. Allow yourself to be still and silent. Sit in the silence. Sit in nature. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's really quite simple, but it's a daily practice. And your self-love and being love starts with you, and how you react with others is an absolute indication as to how you feel about yourself. It starts with you. Everything starts with you. Your success, your relationships, your joy, your happiness, your future. It starts with you here, right now, today. So thank you for being here, those of you who have been part of it. Big love to you all, and a happy Mother's Day to those of you who are celebrating. I wish you all well, and I will see you again soon. Take care. See ya.